Before we start, a little reminder to hit the subscribe button. Just 4% of my channel is subscribed. Humanity, led by Admiral Ethan Cole and eventually General Marcus Hayes, courageously defies the oppressive Thar Dominion's invasion, sacrificing greatly but finally turning the tide in their favor by courage, inventiveness, and unbreakable spirit. Now we start the story. The galaxy was huge, filled with various civilizations and empires that spanned hundreds of star systems. Among them, the Thar Dominion reigned supreme. They were brutal conquerors, feared and respected by those who knew their name. Their warships were legendary, capable of eliminating entire planets from existence. No one dared to resist them, not the Zarin coalition with their superior technologies, nor the peaceful Drins who valued negotiation over combat. The Thar were unstoppable. Or so they thought. When the Dominion cast their sights on a little blue planet on the fringes of their realm, they scarcely deemed it worth the effort. Earth was archaic by their standards, its people insignificant. They conveyed a message to humanity, a simple demand for total submission. But the answer they received was unexpected. It was not the cry for mercy they imagined, but a single word. No. Admiral Carax of the Thar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Ravager of Stars, his red eyes narrowing as he replayed the transmission. The person who had sent it was bold, standing erect in a uniform of blue and white, a symbol of defiance inscribed on his chest. His voice was forceful, unrelenting. "This is Admiral Ethan Cole of the United Earth Fleet. We do not bow to tyrants." Cax's claws curled on the edge of his command console. Insolent creatures, he thought. How dare they resist the Dominion? He had destroyed more strong civilizations to ashes for less. Earth would be no different. "Prepare the fleet," he said, his voice icy as the emptiness. "We will make an example of them." The Thar Armada moved fast. Thousands of vessels, closing on the Sol system. They approached with the intensity of a hurricane, ready to annihilate whatever in their path. Planets shuddered at the sight of their approach. Stars seemed to darken in terror. Yet, as they reached the edge of the solar system, they encountered something unexpected. A lone battleship standing in their way. It was huge, elegant, and black as midnight, its surface sparkling with energy. It had no marks, no indications of surrender or fear, just a word engraved plainly across its hull. UEE Defiance. On the bridge of the Defiance. Admiral Cole stood with his arms crossed, his eyes locked on the view screen. The Thar fleet filled the display, their numbers overwhelming. He knew the chances. He knew that Earth's technology was decades behind theirs, but escape was not an option. Not today. "They're hailing us, sir," Lieutenant Ramirez said, her fingers racing across the console. "On screen," Cole ordered. Cax's visage appeared, his features twisted in a mocking grimace. "You are valiant, human, but foolish. Surrender, and I may grant you a fast death." Cole's expression didn't change. "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." Carax's laughter boomed across the bridge, harsh and arrogant. "You think your tiny ship can stand against my armada? You are outnumbered. Outmatched." Cole's lips twisted into a smile. "Maybe, but we're human. We don't back down." He nodded to Ramirez, who tapped a command. The Defiance revved up its engines, howling as its weapon systems came online. The ship buzzed with energy, the sheer force radiating from its core, sending chills through the hull. KX's smile faded, his eyes hardening. "You dare?" Cole cut the transmission. "Target the flagship. Fire." The Defiance moved with incredible speed, its weapons blazing as beams of pure energy tore through the vacuum. The first shot blasted into the Ravager of Stars, its shields flaring beneath the force. The second blasted through, smashing into the hull and sending debris spiraling into space. Carax tripped as his ship shook violently, alarms ringing. What? How is this possible? On the Defiance, Cole observed quietly as the Thar formation wavered, their confidence crushed. "They think they're gods," he mumbled. "Time to remind them what humanity do to dictators." "Prepare the railguns," he ordered, his voice stern. "Let's show them what Earth is made of." The war had begun, and humanity's resistance rang through the universe. The Defiance rushed ahead, cutting through the void like a predator on the hunt. Its streamlined design was a monument to human ingenuity, a perfect blend of speed, power, and resilience. as its rail cannons buzzed. With energy, Admiral Cole's eyes remained locked on the flagship of the Thar fleet. Fire! Before we start, a little reminder to hit the subscribe button. Just 4% of my channel is subscribed. Humanity, led by Admiral Ethan Cole and eventually General Marcus Hayes, courageously defies the oppressive Thar Dominion's invasion, sacrificing greatly but finally turning the tide in their favor by courage, inventiveness, and unbreakable spirit. Now we start the story. The galaxy was huge, filled with various civilizations and empires that spanned hundreds of star systems. Among them, the Thar Dominion reigned supreme. They were brutal conquerors, feared and respected by those who knew their name. Their warships were legendary, capable of eliminating entire planets from existence. No one dared to resist them. Not the Zarin coalition with their superior technologies, nor the peaceful Drins who valued negotiation over combat. The Thar were unstoppable, or so they thought. When the Dominion cast their sights on a little blue planet on the fringes of their realm, they scarcely deemed it worth the effort. Earth was archaic by their standards, its people insignificant. They conveyed a message to humanity, a simple demand for total submission. But the answer they received was unexpected. It was not the cry for mercy they imagined, but a single word: no. Admiral Carax of the Thar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Ravager of Stars, his red eyes narrowing as he replayed the transmission. The person who had sent it was bold, standing erect in a uniform of blue and white, a symbol of defiance inscribed on his chest. His voice was forceful, unrelenting. This is Admiral Ethan Cole of the United Earth Fleet. We do not bow to tyrants. KX's claws curled on the edge of his command console. Insolent creatures, he thought. How dare they resist the Dominion? He had destroyed more strong civilizations to ashes for less. Earth would be no different. Prepare the fleet, he said, his voice icy as the emptiness. We will make an example of them. The Thar armada moved fast, thousands of vessels. Closing on the Sol system, they approached with the intensity of a hurricane, ready to annihilate whatever in their path. Planets shuddered at the sight of their approach. Stars seemed to darken in terror. Yet, as they reached the edge of the solar system, they encountered something unexpected. A lone battleship standing in their way. It was huge, elegant, and black as midnight, its surface sparkling with energy. It had no marks, no indications of surrender or fear, just a word engraved plainly across its hull: UEE, Defiance. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Cole stood with his arms crossed, his eyes locked on the view screen. The Thar fleet filled the display, their numbers overwhelming. He knew the chances. He knew that Earth's technology was decades behind theirs. But escape was not an option. Not today. "They're hailing us, sir," Lieutenant Ramirez said, her fingers racing across the console. "On screen," Cole ordered. KX's visage appeared, his features twisted in a mocking grimace. "You are valiant, human, but foolish. Surrender and I may grant you a fast death." Cole's expression didn't change. "Funny, I was about to say the same to you." Carax's laughter boomed across the bridge, harsh and arrogant. "You think your tiny ship can stand against my armada? You are outnumbered, outmatched." Cole's lips twisted into a smile. "Maybe, but we're human. We don't back down." He nodded to Ramirez, who tapped a command. The Defiance revved up its engines, howling as its weapon systems came online. The ship buzzed with energy, the sheer force radiating from its core sending chills through the hull. KX's smile faded, his eyes hardening. "You dare." Cole cut the transmission. "Target the flagship. Fire." The Defiance moved with incredible speed, its weapons blazing as beams of pure energy tore through the vacuum. The first shot blasted into the Ravager of Stars, its shields flaring beneath. The Force. The second blasted through, smashing into the hull and sending debris spiraling into space. Carax tripped as his ship shook violently, alarms ringing. What? How is this possible? On the Defiance, Cole observed quietly as the Thar. Formation wavered, their confidence crushed. "They think they're gods," he mumbled. Time to remind them what humanity. A blast of light erupted from the railguns, shooting bullets at speeds nearing the boundo to dictators. "Prepare the railguns," he ordered, his voice stern. "Let's show them what Earth is made of." The moi? War had begun, and humanity's resistance rang through the universe. The Defiance rushed ahead, cutting through the void like a predator on the hunt. Its streamlined design was a monument to human ingenuity, a perfect blend of speed, power, and resilience. As its rail cannons buzzed with energy, Admiral Cole's eyes remained locked on the flagship of the Thar fleet. Fire! A blast of light erupted from the railguns, shooting bullets at speeds nearing the boundary of physics itself. They tore across space, smashing into the Ravager of stars. With inconceivable force, armor plate crumpled, decks disintegrated, and explosions swept throughout the Thar warship's surface. On his bridge, Admiral Karax was flung to the floor as his vessel rocked violently. Sparks flew from smashed consoles, and the air filled with the pungent stink of burning circuits. "Shields failing," yelled one of his officers, worry coloring his voice. "Weapons offline." KX's crimson eyes burned with wrath. "Impossible! How can one human ship do this?" But his question was unanswered, for the Defiance pressed its onslaught with merciless accuracy. It maneuvered like no spacecraft Karax had ever seen, avoiding retaliatory fire with ease. Its speed was astonishing, its weaponry lethal, and most annoying of all, its captain exhibited no fear. On the Defiance, Cole remained stoic, his crew implementing his directives with military precision. They were outnumbered, facing an enemy that had conquered entire galaxies, but they were human, adaptable, persistent, and ferociously driven. "Focus fire on their weapons arrays," Cole commanded. "Take out their guns, and they lose their bite." The Defiance fired again, beams of energy lancing out, striking the Ravager of stars at its weakest points. One by one, the flagship's cannons fell silent, their power sources eliminated. Cole watched as the Thalzar formation faltered, confusion coursing through their ranks. KX's second-in-command, Captain Velor, lurched to his side. "Admiral, our forces are disorganized. They don't know how to engage this thing." KX's claws pressed into the armrest of his chair, denting the metal. "Then I will show them how." He turned to his comm officer. "Order all ships to encircle it. Overwhelm its defenses." The Dominion's fleet responded with brutal efficiency, enveloping the Defiance from all sides. Swarms of warriors raced forward, their weapons lighting up the darkness as they unleashed a torrent of firepower. Cole's eyes narrowed. He had expected this. "Deploy countermeasures. Engage the swarm protocols." The Defiance responded swiftly, its hull shimmering as clouds of drones broke forth, intercepting the incoming fighters. Each drone was outfitted with powerful targeting systems, moving with deadly accuracy as they decimated the Thar onslaught. Crackling explosions blossomed like fireworks, debris spreading across the abyss. But the Dominion was unrelenting. Their warships blasted volley after volley, the sheer volume of fire overcoming the Defiance's shields. Sparks shot as hits rattled the hull, metal groaning under the pressure. "Shields at 60%, Ramirez shouted, her fingers flying over her console. "Hull integrity holding, but we can't take this for long." Cole's jaw tightened. He knew they were testing his defenses, looking for a weakness. But they would find none. Not today, not while Earth still stood. "Prepare the arc cannon," he ordered, his voice calm. His crew hesitated, eyes widening. The arc cannon was experimental, its power unmatched, but its stability untested. They had been warned never to use it unless absolutely necessary. But Cole's gaze was unwavering, his determination contagious. "Do it," he commanded. "Charge the arc cannon." Deep within the heart of the Defiance, the reactor core surged with energy, glowing with a light that defied darkness itself. Power conduits flared as the arc cannon charged, its hum growing into a roar that vibrated through the ship's frame. Karax watched the display on his screen, unease settling into his gut. He could feel the shift, the growing power that radiated from the human battleship. It was as if the very stars trembled in fear. "Admiral, that energy reading, it's off the charts." Veer's voice was shook, his steadiness wavering. No known weapon should have that kind of output. Karax's confidence slipped, replaced by a chilling reality. This was no primitive race. These humans were dangerous. They were battling for survival, for independence, and they had just unveiled their trump card. "Order all ships to fall back," he shouted. "Get us out of range." But it was too late. The arc cannon fired, a beam of pure energy erupting from the Defiance's prow, carving through space with a brilliance that dwarfed the stars. It tore into the Thar fleet, vaporizing warships in an instant, reducing their mightiest vessels to cosmic dust. The Ravager of Stars was struck directly, its shield shattering like glass. The beam pierced its hull, cutting through layer after layer of armor, slicing the ship in half. Explosions erupted from within, consuming the flagship, as its reactors detonated in a chain reaction of destruction. On board the dreadnought, Supreme Warlord Zor watched with a cold, calculating gaze. His scales glistened under the red light of his command chamber, his posture regal and composed. Unlike Karax, he was no fool. He had studied the humans, learned their tactics, their weaknesses, and he had come prepared. "Bring the nullifier online," Zor demanded, his voice like gravel. "Let's see how their precious battleship fares without its toys." The dreadnought's hull blazed ominously, energy rippling outward. A shockwave blasted forth, spreading across space, washing over the Defiance. Ramirez's console flickered, her face draining of color. "Admiral, our systems! They're shutting down!" Cole's eyes widened as the lights darkened, the hum of the engines receding. He could feel the ship's power waning, its weaponry growing silent. The arc cannon dimmed, its energy cut off. "They're using some kind of energy dampener," Cole realized, his pulse hammering. "They've neutralized our tech." The Defiance drifted, hopelessly as the Thar fleet closed in, their weapons primed and ready. Zor's voice sounded across the radio, icy and mocking. "You fought well, human, but your defiance ends here." Cole's jaw clenched, his mind racing. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and now vulnerable. But surrender was not an option. It never was. "Emergency power to maneuvering thrusters," he said, his voice steady. "Prepare for evasive action. This fight isn't over." The Defiance strained to life, its movements lethargic but refusing to go down without a fight. Cole's eyes burned with defiance, his spirit unbreakable. They may have taken his weapons, but they would never take his will. The Defiance lurched through space, its thrusters sputtering as it tried to evade the onslaught. The Thar fleet closed in, surrounding the battleship like predators circling wounded prey. Beams of energy tore through the void, narrowly missing, as Cole's crew fought desperately to keep their ship moving. "Secondary power systems failing," Lieutenant Ramirez reported, her voice strained. "We're barely holding on, Admiral." Cole gritted his teeth, his hands gripping the edge of his command console. The energy dampener had crippled them, neutralizing their advanced systems. The arc cannon was offline, the shields were collapsing, and their weapons were useless, but he refused to give in. "Keep us moving," he ordered, his voice firm. "They want us cornered. Don't give them that gratification." The Defiance twisted and turned, escaping a hail of enemy fire. Explosions flashed around them, debris crashing into the hull. The ship groaned under the pressure but kept moving, defying the odds once again. On board the Thar dreadnought, Supreme Warlord Zor observed with a mixture of interest and loathing. "Stubborn creatures," he mumbled, his brows narrowing. "They refuse to die, even when victory is impossible." His second-in-command, Commander Varric, moved forward. "Should we finish them off, my lord?" Zor's lips curved into a menacing smile. "Not yet. Let them struggle. Let them comprehend the futility of resistance." Varric bowed. "As you command." The Thar fleet tightened their formation, engulfing the Defiance on all sides. They fired, in coordinated waves, their cannons lighting up the darkness, pushing the human battleship into a desperate dance. Inside the Defiance, the situation was dire. Consoles ignited, smoke filled the air, and injured crew members were being rushed to the infirmary. The ship was barely hanging together, its systems failing one by one, but Admiral Cole remained, resolute, his eyes burning with defiance. "Sir, we can't keep this up," Ramirez shouted over the chaos. "We've lost engines 3 and 4. We're running on fumes." Cole's mind raced. They were out of time, out of options. But he couldn't let Earth fall. He couldn't allow humanity be subjugated by these monsters. "Lieutenant?" he asked, his voice low but adamant. "Are the manual targeting systems still operational?" Ramirez hesitated. "Yes, but they're obsolete. Wrong. We haven't utilized them in years." Cole's eyes was cold as steel. We don't need accuracy. We only need to make some noise. He turned to his weapons officer, Lieutenant Harris. Target the debris field. Set the previous fusion warheads at maximum yield. Harris's eyes widened. Sir, that'll spark a chain reaction. The whole area will go up like a supernova. Exactly, Cole said, his gaze steely. And we'll be right in the middle of it. Realization dawned on his crew's faces. It was a suicide maneuver, a desperate attempt to take as many of the enemy with them as possible. But they were out of choices, and Cole would be damned if he went down softly. Do it, he said. That's an order. Harris nodded, his expression grim with determination. His fingers danced over the controls, manually locking, onto the shattered fragments of wrecked ships. The fusion warheads armed, their timing set. Cole looked around the bridge, catching the eyes of every man and woman who had battled by his side. It's been an honor serving alongside you all, he said, his voice firm. No matter what happens, remember that we stood our ground. We fought. Back. His team straightened, saluting him with tremendous pride. They were afraid, but they were also strong. They knew what was at risk. Detonation in 60 seconds, Harris reported, his hands shaking but his voice firm. It's been an honor, sir. Cole nodded. Hold the line for Earth. The Defiance slowed, drifting into the heart of the debris field, surrounded by the wreckage of countless ships. The Thar fleet moved in for the kill, their formation tightening, their weapons charging for the final blow. Zor watched, his confidence unwavering. This is the end for them, he declared. All effort, like all the rest. But as the countdown reached 0, his eyes widened in horror. The debris field ignited, a chain reaction rippling through the wreckage. Fusion warheads detonated in a cascade of blinding light, each explosion feeding the next. The void itself seemed to burn as the supernova engulfed everything in its path. Thar warships were caught in the blast, their shields disintegrating, their hulls vaporized. Even the mighty dreadnought was rocked by the shockwave, its systems flickering as the energy overload surged through its circuits. On the Defiance, Admiral Cole watched the wreckage unfold, his heart sorrowful but resolute. They had given a severe blow to the enemy, taking hundreds of vessels with them. But his ship was caught in the blast, the hull splitting, systems failing. Admiral, Ramirez said, tears in her eyes, we're not going to make it, are we? Cole's gaze softened, his resolve intact. No, but we did what we had to. We fought back. We showed them that humanity won't be broken. The light devoured them, the bridge shaking as the Defiance began to break apart. Alarms blared, metal twisted, and the void beckoned. Cole closed his eyes, his final thought one of serenity. They had stood their ground. They had fought to the end. And as the Defiance was swallowed by the supernova, its legacy rang across the stars, a testimony to the indestructible spirit of humanity. Silence, vast, cold, and unforgiving. The aftermath of the explosion left a void in space where once the Defiance had stood defiant against an empire. The supernova's light faded, revealing the wreckage of Thar warships scattered across the battlefield. They were broken, twisted, shattered by the fury of humanity's final stand. Yet amidst the debris and cosmic dust, a faint signal flickered, weak, intermittent, barely detectable. It was coming from the remains of the Defiance, deep within the fractured hull. A small emergency pod clung to life, its systems struggling to function. Inside, Admiral Cole was barely conscious, his body battered and bruised. He could feel the cold seep into his bones, the life support system failing. But as he opened his eyes, he saw Earth in the distance, a blue and white marble floating peacefully against the stars. A tear slipped down his cheek. They had protected it. They had given everything to keep it safe. But was it enough? His comm sparked to life, a broken voice coming through. Anyone copy? This is Luna Base. Heavy casualties, enemy retreating, Defiance. Do you read? Cole's heart skipped. They had survived, against all chances. Luna Base was still standing, but the cost, his crew, his ship, gone. With the last of his power, he groped for the transmission. This is Admiral Cole, he rasped, his voice barely, above a whisper. The Defiance is down, but Earth is safe. A chorus of relief flooded the comms, voices screaming, crying, celebrating. He had given them hope, showed them that even the mightiest of rulers might be resisted. But his victory was not without consequence. On board the Thar dreadnought, Supreme Warlord Zor staggered to his feet, his regal posture shattered by the force of the explosion. His command chamber was in ruins, screens shattered, circuits sparking. Yet somehow, his ship still held together. Varric crawled to his side, his armor scorched, his face contorted in pain. "My lord, the fleet, it's gone. They destroyed us." Zor's eyes burned with rage, his claws curling into fists. "One ship," he growled, his voice dripping with disbelief. "One human ship did this." His pride was wounded, his power diminished. The Thar Dominion had never known defeat. Not until today. Not until these defiant creatures had dared to challenge his rule. "They will pay," Zor growled, his voice harsh and malicious. "I will burn their planet to ashes. I will make them suffer for this disgrace." Varric hesitated. "My lord, we barely escaped. Our forces are devastated. If we attack now—" Zor's claw rushed out, catching Varric by the throat. "We are the Thar. We do not retreat. We do not surrender." "Yes, ma'am." They appeared out of nowhere, knocked out the defense grid in minutes. The fleet we faced before, it was simply a scout force. The actual invasion has begun. Her blood ran cold. "How many?" The officer's hands trembled. "Thousands. Their numbers, we've never seen anything like it." Reed turned to Hayes, her eyes burning. "Get the Vengeance ready. I want the ship in the air within the hour." Hayes hesitated. "Madam President, the crew isn't fully trained. We've never tested the arc cannon in combat. We don't even know if—" "No time for experiments," Reed yelled. "If we lose Mars, they'll be on Earth next. We either fight now or we die." Hayes' expression hardened. He understood. This was humanity's last stand. "I'll assemble the crew," he replied, his voice determined. "We'll be ready." As he started to go, Reed called after him. "And General, find me a captain. I want someone who can finish what Admiral Cole started." Hayes paused, his eyes shifting to the memorial on the wall, a plaque containing Cole's name and the names of his slain crew. "I think I know just the man." Meanwhile, on Mars, the situation was dire. The Thar descended upon the colony like locusts, their warships raining destruction from above. Buildings crumbled, defenses shattered, and civilians fled in terror. The sky burned with fire and smoke, the air filled with screams. Commander Alex Mason fought desperately to hold the line, his soldiers outmatched and outgunned. He watched, in horror as his platoon was decimated, the Thalzar cutting through them without mercy. "Fall back!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. "Regroup at the command center. We make our stand there." His men followed, their faces pale with fear. They had heard the stories, the legends of the Thar's brutality, but nothing could have prepared them for this. As they retreated through the ruins, Mason looked to the sky, his heart sinking. The enemy fleet was endless, stretching across the horizon. How could they possibly survive this? His comm burst to life, a voice cutting through the air. "This is United Earth Fleet Command to Mars Colony. Reinforcements are on the way. Hold the line." Mason's breath hitched. Reinforcements? Could it be true? He peered up just in time to see a streak of light pierce the atmosphere, plummeting like a falling star. It moved with remarkable speed, its silhouette black and threatening. The UES Vengeance had come. Its cannons roared to life, beams of energy tearing through Thar warships, reducing them to molten slag. It moved with terrifying speed, weaving through enemy formations, its weapons blazing with fury. On board the Vengeance, General Hayes stood on the bridge, his face set with grim determination. "All weapons free, show these bastards what humanity can accomplish." The crew answered with precision, firing volley after volley, pushing the Thals back. But it was not enough. Their numbers were overwhelming, their resolve immovable. Hayes knew what had to be done. He went to his weapons officer. "Prepare the arc cannon." The officer's face grew pale. "Sir, we're right in the center of the colony. If we fire now—" Hayes' eyes were chilly. "I know. But if we don't, Mars is lost." The arc cannon began to charge, its energy swelling to a crescendo. The air hummed with force, the ship vibrating as the weapon reached maximum output. Hayes stared to the screen, his jaw clenched. Fire! The beam erupted from the Vengeance, cutting through space, obliterating everything in its path. The Thar fleet was vaporized, their ships torn apart in an instant. But the cost was high. The Vengeance went dark, its systems drained, its engines failing. It began to fall, spiraling toward the surface. On Mars, Commander Mason gazed in horror as the battleship descended from the sky, a black shadow descending into the battlefield. The Vengeance was formidable, but its power had come at a horrible price. The Vengeance dropped from the sky, its once majestic shape plummeting toward the Martian land. Flames devoured its hull as it tore through the atmosphere, engines silent, systems dead. It was a massive titan brought low by its own power, a weapon too great for its own good. On the ground, Commander Alex Mason watched with horror as the battleship fell. Dust and debris clouded the air, the shockwave from the impact knocking him off his feet. He shielded his eyes, his heart sinking. This was supposed to be their salvation, their last hope. For a moment, all was silent. Then the ground trembled as the Thar surged, their forces reforming, their war cries resounding over the battlefield. They had seen the fall of the Vengeance, and they were hungry for blood. Mason stumbled to his feet, his face set with resolve. All units, fall back to the command center. We hold this line, or we die trying. His soldiers clustered around him, their faces pale but fierce. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they were human. They would not go easily. As they braced for the final assault, a low hum filled the air. Mason's head snapped up, his eyes widening. The Vengeance? It was moving. Amidst the wreckage, the colossal battleship began to stir. Its hull was battered, its armor scorched, but its heart still beat. Deep within its core, emergency power flickered to life, reigniting its systems one by one. On the bridge, General Marcus Hayes groaned as he dragged himself from the rubble, his body aching, his vision blurred. But he was alive. Around him, his crew stirred, coughing as smoke filled the air. "Report!" Hayes yelled, his voice raspy. Lieutenant Park stumbled to her console, her hands quivering as she checked the systems. We're still operating, sir. Barely. Weapons offline, engines at 5%, life support holding. Hayes's brows narrowed. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He looked at the screen, seeing the Thar forces rushing on Mars colony, their weapons primed, their victory secured. "No," he mumbled. "Not today. Can we move?" Park hesitated. "Thrusters are functional, but we're dead in the water otherwise." Hayes's jaw hardened. "Then we'll crawl if we have to. Get us over the colony. We're their only shield now." The Vengeance groaned as it rose from the crater, its thrusters sparking, its hull fractured and broken. But it moved. Slowly, painfully, it moved. On the battlefield, Mason's warriors watched in awe as the battleship loomed over them, its shadow protecting them from the incoming attack. Hope flared in their eyes. Maybe they weren't alone after all. Hayes stood tall on the bridge, his voice resounding across the comms. "This is General Marcus Hayes of the UES Vengeance to all Thar forces. You shall not pass." The Dominion's warships stopped, their formations weakening. They had watched this ship fall, they had seen it destroyed, defeated, and yet it still stood, defying them once again. Supreme Warlord Zor's face twisted in wrath as he watched from his command ship. "Impossible! That ship should be dust!" His claws tightened into fists. "All units, annihilate, leave no trace." The Thalzar unleashed a storm of firepower, beams of energy and missiles raining down on the Vengeance. The battleship shuddered, its armor melting under the assault, metal groaning, circuits frying, but it held. Inside, sparks flew as consoles, exploded, crew members thrown from their stations. But no one fled, no one faltered. They stood their ground, just as Admiral Cole had taught them. Hayes's eyes flashed with intensity. "All power to the shields. Protect. Hey everyone, if you enjoy these epic HFY stories, don't forget to subscribe, press the like button, and drop a comment below to let us know your favorite portion or what stories you'd love to hear next. Your support keeps the channel growing and the tales coming. Thanks for being part of our channel.